Hey guys, it's Hart. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be doing a final look core play video for this slate tomorrow on DraftKings. Obviously, the main slate here, 12 games, $1 million up top to first place. I'm going through the key injury news that you guys need to know to kind of help leverage your players, maybe find some different pivot plays. I'll be going through that as well as my core plays and kind of a final look build for tomorrow to set you guys up for success. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And let's get into this video. If you want a more in-depth breakdown, I did drop my video a few days ago. I think it was on Tuesday or Wednesday of an early look slate breakdown for this slate. So it's a little bit more in depth if you want, hear my thoughts going through each, position. But right now, just touching on the key injury news here, we'll just quickly go through, each game by game. For this first game, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Carr's questionable. Obviously, if he's out, we can look to Jameis Winston. He'd be a very solid value play. Otherwise, nothing too crazy in terms of skill positions. Foster Morrow's out, or excuse me, questionable. If he's out, just more more snaps to Juwan Johnson, who'd be a decent play there. But in terms of defense, on the defensive side of things for Tampa Bay, there's a lot of question marks, a lot of injury news. So keep an eye out on that because if they're out, obviously makes these New Orleans guys a lot more viable. And big news here: Kamara is back. We'll just have to wait and see kind of what news we get on workload. And I'd say watch out if you're playing Mike Evans. Him and Marcus Lattimore might fight and get thrown out again. So there's always that risk there. The best game in terms of just the game total to stack with pieces. This game here, Miami and Buffalo. Nothing too crazy in terms of the skill positions besides Miami. They do have Craycraft out, and they put E on the non-injured list. And so Barrios will be wide receiver 3. He's solid value there at 3,600. I'm sure they'll play Chosen and Wilson a little bit, but I don't love getting into those guys. It's just very contrarian if you do. Otherwise, this game, everyone else should be pretty solid. No huge injury news. Miami is a little bit banged up on the defensive side of things. For Buffalo, Jordan Poyer is out, so DeMar Hamlin was probably going to start. So it just makes guys like Waddle and Tyreek Hill way more viable. Not a ton, maybe a few percentage points, I guess you could say. Hard to quantify that, but DeMar Hamlin is terrible. So I would expect, Waddle and Tyreek Hill to take advantage of that. For this third game here, Minnesota and Carolina. Skill position wise, Bryce Young is back. Running back, Miles Sanders is questionable. So if he's out, Chuba Hubbard could be a great play there going against Minnesota. 4,800, he'd be very cheap. Otherwise, nothing too crazy here. Wide receiver situation, I know for the Carolina side of things, Thielen's very, very popular for good reason. He's been going off the past 2 weeks. Um, I don't mind him. He's a solid play, revenge game narrative, but if everyone's going to go to him, I wouldn't mind going to DJ Chark here. He did see 11 targets, and obviously that came from Andy Dalton, but $4,000, he's a decent wide receiver. If Thielen's going to have all the love, I wouldn't mind going to him for $500 cheaper in a great matchup against Minnesota. Minnesota's still dealing with some question marks on the O-line. Carolina, their secondary is iffy there, so keep that in mind. For Denver and Chicago, nothing crazy here in terms of just like the people we can put in our lineup. But on the defensive side of things, both teams are god awful, and both teams are missing a ton of pieces. The Bears, I think their whole secondary is questionable, or they're all going to be out. I know they're already missing, I think, 2 of their corners and Eddie Jackson, so I think their whole secondary is out. So all backups there. Denver side of things, Justin Simmons might miss. A few other pieces might miss. So a lot to like here in terms of getting some pieces from this game. Like I love Jerry Jeudy. I love Javonte Williams. And I do like Cole Kmet and, DJ Moore a decent amount. It could be a sneaky game to stack and get some pieces from. Baltimore, Cleveland. Big news here. Deshaun Watson's questionable. If he's out, DTR does look like a very solid value play, 4,600, especially since the Baltimore defense is pretty banged up. They're banged up both defensively and offensively, the O-line and some of their key positions. Like, let's just go through them real fast. So QB, obviously they're fine, but running back situation, probably a 3-headed monster there with Gus, Melvin, and Justice Hill if he's in. Wide receiver situation, they're missing Bateman and Beckham. Wallace is on the IR, so Zay Flowers, wide receiver 1. Alec Aguilar, wide receiver 2. Looks great there. Is cheap value, 3,400. Solid past 2 weeks. Wide receiver 3, I'm assuming it's going to be Devin Duvernay. He's a lot of experience compared to guys like Ryan and Treadwell. So I'm assuming it's going to be Duvernay. So we can definitely look to those guys. But yeah, their O-line is pretty banged up. Their defense is pretty banged up. So Baltimore are not looking the best right now. Same thing with Cleveland. Obviously Deshaun's questionable. They do have some question marks in terms of defense, but they should be pretty good otherwise. Njoku's questionable. If he's out, we can definitely look to like a Harrison Bryant. He's kind of the main backup there. They will throw Jordan Akins in a little bit, but nothing too crazy there. But yeah, a lot of the injury news there for Baltimore. For Pittsburgh, nothing crazy here. All pretty much good to go. Deontay Johnson's still out. Houston, the big news here is that their O line is in shambles. Their defense, they have question marks, but their offensive line, they're missing a few key pieces here. So it's not the best news for Damian Pierce at all. And I do think it really hurts this offense in terms of throwing the ball. Like I still love these wide receivers; they're all very cheap. Collins is 5,100. Tank Dowell coming off a great week last there. If you guys listen to my video, I was all over him. Robert Woods cheap. Matchy's getting a little bit of snaps, but it's very hard to trust them going against this defense, especially when they're missing a few of their best offensive linemen. So definitely keep that in mind going to Houston here. They're going to be popular to get pieces from once again, but it might be an absolute feast for that Pittsburgh defense for TJ Watt. Rams, Indiana. Rams side, they're pretty good in terms of just like injury news. Nothing too crazy on the offensive line or defensive side of things. They do have some question marks, but nothing too wild. Skill position wise, they look pretty solid. Higbee's questionable. If he's out, we can look to Bryson Hopkins as some value there, but nothing too crazy. And then for the Indiana side, their defense is not the best, and they do have some question marks. They have two offensive linemen who are key pieces that might be out. I think Quentin Nelson. I think he's already ruled out. Don't quote me. I think he might be ruled out. And then they have another guy as well. So they're very banged up offensive line wise. So it doesn't make Zach Moss that appealing, even though he's been really solid. And they do have Anthony Richardson back, so that should hurt the downside of rushing for Zach Moss. But otherwise, that's my thoughts there. I think it's a great game to stack in terms of get into the Rams people. We'll get to them in a minute. Washington, Philly, nothing too crazy. Obviously, Washington secondary, they do have some question marks, but their defense line's really solid. Philly, kind of the same thing. They do have some question marks on line defense, but nothing too crazy. Cincinnati, Tennessee. I'm going to go back to Washington, Philly real fast. Just run through. Yeah, they should be good. Quez Watkins is out, so Zacchaeus will be wide receiver 3, but nothing too crazy there. And Logan Thomas is back for the Washington side. Cincinnati and Tennessee on the Cincinnati side of things. Nothing too crazy. They do have some question marks on just like the O-line and secondary, but they're pretty much good, air quote, good to go. Nothing too crazy in terms of injury news. If Smith is out, so Hudson will be the passing down tight end there. Sample will get some looks as well, so you can definitely look to them. Tennessee, all good to go besides wide receiver. Treylon Burks is out, so Westbrook will be wide receiver 2. He's great, cheap value. Tannehill does like throwing them, and then Moore is kind of like a gadget guy. He's definitely viable as well. I'd feel safer going to Westbrook, but Moore is definitely viable, so some cheap value there. But yeah, Tennessee, they're dealing with some injuries on the O-line, the defensive line, or excuse me, the secondary. So injury news there. Las Vegas and the Chargers, both teams dealing with some injury news. So obviously Jimmy Garoppolo is questionable. If he's out, we can look to Brian Hoyer as some value there. Austin Eckler is doubtful. So obviously Joshua Kelly going to be the running back once again. He's been god awful, but I don't think we overlook him because he does have upside. Mike Williams, not questionable. He's out, unfortunately. RIP, one of my fantasy teams. With him out, obviously the free square of the day becomes Joshua Palmer there at 4,000. A lot of people are like, Joshua Palmer, he's $4,000. He was very, very solid last year, stepping in for Mike Williams and Keenan Allen when they were injured. So, I mean, him at this price, in this game environment, in this offense, as wide receiver 2, really, really hard not to like him. I think Quentin Johnston's a fine play as well. I mean, if the ownership's going to be egregious, like if Jordan Palmer's going to be like 30% here in the Millie Maker and Quentin Johnston's going to be like 10%, I'd rather get to Quentin Johnston just because of that ownership difference. But still, I think Jordan Palmer is the safer play. But yeah, both defenses are very, very banged up. So definitely keep that in mind here. Could just, adds a little bit more interest to the passing attack for both sides. New England, Dallas, nothing too crazy. Dallas does have a few question marks on the O-line, some key pieces there, so that could be just a little bit of downgrade to the offense, especially running the ball. And then Arizona, a lot of the guys on the defense are questionable. Hollywood Brown is questionable as well. If he's out, obviously we can get some value here with Dortch, Rondell Moore, and Wilson. It sucks because it is a late afternoon game, against one of the probably the arguably the best team in the league. It's not the best matchup here, but Arizona's been sneaky good the past few weeks. In San Francisco, do have some question marks on the defensive side of things as well as the offense. Mitchell's questionable. If he's out, we can definitely look to Mason. He's more of like a kind of like a scat back, catches passes out of the backfield, but he'd be running back two there. And it's a blowout narrative, so he definitely could get some more work there. Wouldn't mind taking a dart throw on him if you're making multiple lineups. Wide receiver situation, Debo's questionable. Jennings is doubtful. So we could definitely look to them as some value. IU could be a great wide receiver one. George Kittle could be way more viable. It sucks because it's an afternoon game, so we won't get the injury news probably till halftime of these main slates. So you might have to play around. You might have to get risky and try to play for that news in case Debo does miss, in case Elijah Mitchell does miss. We could definitely get some solid pieces here. There'll probably be decent ownership because most people are not going to build around the fact that there is news here in this Arizona and San Fran game because they're going to see the box score, see it's like a 14.5 point spread, and they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to get my pieces from the other games. But if you want to get an advantage on the field, that is one way to play for the injury news and hope it goes your way. But yeah, we could look to Ayuk, Ronnie Bell, Ray McLeod as some value there for San Fran. So that's the injury news. I'll try to find a better format where it doesn't take the first 10 minutes of the video. But for these core plays here, I mentioned a bunch of pivots. a lot to like here, as I said. If you want to, more of an in-depth breakdown, check out my video I put out, my early look video the other day. But right now, I think for quarterback, I am landing on Matt Stafford going up against a very, very bad Indiana defense. He's a guy who's probably going to throw the ball 40 plus times. Just hasn't got that luck in terms of like the red zone, in terms of passing touchdowns, but still, he's been putting up very solid numbers for a guy who's really not getting many passing touchdowns, if not any at all. He only has 2. Last game, it was just a brutal game. They're 0 of 10 on third down. They're 0 of 3 in the red zone there, and he still put up 14 fantasy points. So it's like all it takes is for him to get 2 passing touchdowns, and he's going to be rock solid going against a very, very poor and bad defense. Really, really like Matt Stafford. You compare him with Kyron Williams. I mean, Kyron Williams looks great. If they're up, he's going to rush the ball. If they're down, he's going to get a ton of targets. So I think he looks fantastic against Indiana. But I'm going to go more towards the wide receivers. Love Puka, 6,700. He looks fantastic here. The Colts love to run man. Puka's been one of the best wide receivers in terms of man coverage. I love Tutu as well. 5,500. He's been great the past 3 weeks. Van Jefferson, I think, is once again a solid sneaky play. Not getting much love there from Stafford, but still, he's a decent pivot. And then Higbee, if he's good to go, I do like him. He did get more involved in that last game there. But yeah, love the Rams side of things. They're going to be my core plays, Stafford and Puka. Let's just throw Tutu in there as well for right now. Moving on to the running back situation. I think this is where I'm going to get contrarian here. I'm kind of leaning towards going to Derrick Henry. Obviously, the Cincinnati defense is pretty solid, but still, it's Derrick Henry. Really hasn't popped off yet. Hasn't been the most efficient. The Titans have been god awful, but this is a spot where I think once again he's going to be extremely low ownership, probably around, I'd say 7%, maybe less. And so that's fantastic there, and it allows us to get a little bit different here with this game stack. We're going to go to Jamar Chase, or you can throw in T. Higgins. Don't mind either one of them, but I prefer Jamar Chase. They did get him back on track last game, 7,800. Do like him there, a nice little game stack. Derrick Henry, if he does pop off, does do good. You would think they're going to be up, going to be running the ball a ton. So the Bengals are going to have to throw the ball a ton. Jamar Chase, that's why it makes sense to go to him there. And then for tight end, since we went to that tight end situation, I do like paying down a little bit. I like getting to Dalton Kincaid. Had a great first 2 weeks. Obviously, the third week, the defense did everything for them, so they really didn't have to do much. 3,200 and a great game environment, game total. So do really like him a lot. He's running a ton of routes, playing a ton. So 3,200, I think he looks fantastic, and that does it for kind of my core plays. Obviously, it's almost a whole lineup, so you can pick and choose who you want. Obviously, I don't think a lot of people are going to like the Derrick Henry play there, so you can definitely pay off of him, pay down. But this is kind of the route I'm going towards. Love Matt Stafford and the Rams offense there. I do think he's finally getting a good game here soon. And then I do like in different running backs. There's a lot to like here for the running backs, as I mentioned. I think you really can't go wrong. There's so many good matchups. There's so many running backs that get a ton of volume. As Miles Sanders, if he's out, Chuba looks like a great value piece. There's no like real value pieces unless Miles Sanders is out. But just in terms of running backs that are going to be in, I mean, from Josh Kelly all the way up, I mean, all these people you really can't go wrong with. There's a ton of fantastic matchups. Right now, I just like getting a little bit different with Derrick Henry. But yeah, as I said, the absolute free square is probably going to be Jordan Palmer. But yeah, this is kind of the route I'm going. So if you guys like the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Do appreciate all the support. I'll have a PrizePicks video out after this, as well as a Sunday night football showdown slate breakdown out tomorrow morning. So make sure to hit that like button once again, and I appreciate it. See you guys in the next video. Peace.